Hi there, everybody, and welcome to First Draft for the month of July. This is kind of a special month for the romance community because it is the month that we all go to, or many of us go to RWA. So we thought what better time to kind of open up First Draft a little bit and do a special double session for you all about RWA. So we're going to be talking tonight and then also in a couple of weeks getting you ready for that conference. Or if you've been thinking about that conference, getting you ready to maybe sign on the dotted line next year. So first things first, we're going to say Happy July and kind of whip around and introduce everybody. I'm just going to go in order on the bottom of my screen. So Alexis Anne, if you want to start us off.
Hi, I'm Alexis Anne. I write contemporary and erotic romance, and I happen to have my badge from last year with me.
Very nice. We got Lachelle Collins next. I don't know if you have a badge with you right now. Mine's hidden somewhere in my apartment.
I don't have a badge with me, but I think I know where it is. I'm Lachelle Collins, and I write romantic suspense and contemporary romance.
Mary Chris Escobar. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Mary Chris Escobar, and I write women's fiction. I also have my badge right here behind me. Just happened to see it. On the shelf, yeah.
Nice. And Tracy, last but not least.
Hi, I am Tracy Puckett, and I write young adult and new adult fiction. And my badge is packed up in a box because I'm in the moving process, so I don't have it with me.
Very exciting. Well, we'll forgive you not having your badge. Mine's just in a messy apartment. So, I am Julia Kelly, and I write historical and contemporary romance, and I don't have my badge with me, but one thing we all do share in common is we are RWA veterans. We all went to our first conference last year, and with the memory of kind of that first conference fresh in our minds, we thought that we would hopefully do a little bit of a helpful chat talking about why we decided to go, why we think everybody else should go, and why you would pay all that money to fly to random places across the country. So perhaps we can all start by talking a little bit about why we decided to attend RWA last year, and then we can get a little bit more into the why go back part of it. So I'm going to go backwards this time. Tracy, if you want to start.
Last year, I decided to go very late in the game. I'm almost certain I was like the last person to register because I had gotten an email from Smashwords, and they wanted to know if they could include one of my books on this thumb drive that they were giving away as a registration gift. And I wasn't really familiar with what RWA was or why they would want to do that. So I looked into it and thought, wow, this looks really fun. So I took them up on that invitation, and I decided to go to Atlanta. That was last year.
Very nice. Mary Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I was actually, I had self-published my first novel, and I was going through some business training. I sort of had this epiphany that being an independently published author means that you're running a business, which I had never really thought about it that way before. And one of the recommendations in that training was talking about networking, and specifically talked about conferences in your industry. And I remembered some authors that I had liked had gone to RWA, and so it just kind of popped into my head. I don't feel like I was one of the last people to register, but I definitely didn't register early. You know, it was definitely like it popped into my head, and then I Googled it, and it just happened to still be, you know, something I could register for. It was a time of year that worked with my day job to go, and it was in Georgia, and I live on the East Coast, so I was like, well, this is kind of a no-brainer. It's, you know, a pretty easy trip, so I just bought my ticket and decided to go.
What about you, Lachelle?
Like Mary Chris, I had just published my my first novel, self-published, and I just kind of stumbled into it and felt like, you know, what the heck am I doing? So I kind of stumbled across the RWA website and figured this was something I should check out.
Alexis Anne, what about you?
I had an old friend from high school who is kind of part of the publishing community, and I had been sending her stuff back and forth. I had already self-published a couple of short stories, and she very firmly said, you need to join RWA, you need to look into being part of this community. This is what is going to help you become a professional writer and move on to the next level. And so I looked into RWA as an organization first and joined RWA, and then saw that the conference was coming up, and I knew several people from Twitter who would be going, and it sounded like a really great opportunity to meet other writers and to network and to find out what it meant to be part of this industry. And I registered late. I paid the extra money at the last minute and was terrified the whole time that I had just wasted my money.
So I have a totally different story from the rest of you. I was day one registered with RWA. Basically what happened was a few years ago I was a member of RWA and let my membership lapse because I really wasn't in a place, I think, in my writing career where I was taking it completely seriously. It was more of a hobby type of thing, and I just forgot to renew my dues. But that year it had been in New York City, and I thought that was kind of a big wasted opportunity since I live here in New York. So when I decided to really start taking this as a professional second job, I marked down on my calendar when the conference was, and I had it there whenever it opened up in January and registered myself on the day, registered a hotel room on the day, and was really excited and really nervous about it for about 7 months. So I went into RWA definitely knowing that I wanted to be there. I didn't quite know why I wanted to be there, but I think I was so tired of kind of sitting and trying to explain to people why I did this little writing thing that I was trying to make a job out of, that I just wanted to be around other writers. So I was really excited about that, and again, booked very, very, very early, which is funny because that's actually what I did again this year. I had it marked down on my calendar, and I think Lexi and I were texting back and forth to each other on the day of, being like, we're going, we're registered, it's happening. So obviously all of us ended up going, and I kind of want to open it up and talk a little bit about what your initial experience was with RWA, and then maybe we can step back a little bit and talk about how you felt after you processed it, because it definitely is one of those events that you need to take some time and figure out what the hell you just did. So Alexis Anne, if you want to start out with what was your impression when you got there?
When I got there, it was very overwhelming. It's this massive hotel, and I got there, I think it was on Wednesday, and there was already a lot going because Library Day had already happened and everyone was starting to arrive, and it's nerve-wracking going into something where you don't know anybody already, and so it was very overwhelming. And then when day one hit and I started going into workshops and everyone was just questions and knew what they were doing, and I just had this sense that I really needed to play catch-up fast.
How about you, Lachelle? Did you feel like this was a completely overwhelming experience, or were you pretty comfortable sort of from day one?
I'm an introvert, so I was not comfortable. I remember being terrified walking into that huge hotel for the first time. And I remember being terrified going into that orientation, the newbie orientation. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely overwhelmed. That's a good word.
How about you, Mary Chris?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that hotel was intimidating. I think something about it being like a high-rise building, and you're standing there on the ground floor looking up, and it's incredibly intimidating.
It keeps going forever.
Yes, it went forever. It was, what was it, the Marriott in Georgia, if anyone's ever been there? Yeah, the downtown conference center. So, which actually I think it's a pretty common place for conferences, because I've heard other people talk about being there and having that reaction. So it was definitely overwhelming. Interestingly, I'm also a huge introvert, but I have a terrible sense of direction, and I wasn't staying in the hotel where the conference was for the first night, and so I think I was so nervous about navigating myself around this city that I really had not spent any time into that I really didn't stop to think about the intimidating part of going to a giant conference where I didn't know anybody, because it feels like a bigger deal that I might still be wandering the streets of Atlanta today. So I think I just didn't really have time to think about it. But I also do think I had a sense of going into it very much like I had paid the money to go and I was going to get whatever I could out of it. So yeah, it was totally overwhelming. I just kind of made that decision once I got past the soaring hotel to kind of throw myself into it.
How about you, Tracy? I know you weren't staying at the hotel either, so you may.
Right. So I can actually relate with Mary Chris really well on that, because this was a huge experience of firsts for me. It was my first time on an airplane and my first time to really leave home, and for any extended period of time, and first time to leave my kid. So I think overwhelmed is not exactly the best word, because I was so preoccupied with being in a different hotel, walking the city, trying to get to the conference every day, 2 or 3 times a day. It was frightening, but I guess overwhelming at the same time, but exciting. Like, it was just all so brand new and so exciting. So it was mixed emotions, to say the least.
So I'm in TV news, and one of the things that I used to do was in graduate school I was forced to report, even though that's not what I enjoyed doing, and I've since left the on-camera side of things. So I basically, before I went, read a whole bunch of things from a whole bunch of people, which is what we're trying to give you a resource here to kind of bring some of those pieces of advice that are scattered across the internet together and talk about some of the things you can expect. So I read up a whole bunch, and then I basically said to myself, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my old reporter cap on, for lack of a better term, and force myself to be extroverted and force myself to introduce myself to people and not kind of recede into what I'm normally do, which is sit back and observe when I'm in a large group of people I don't know. And I had I had a few Twitter relationships with a couple of people, but nobody that I felt particularly close to. I didn't quite understand this whole, like, not meeting people in real life, but being close to them through an online community, which I think all of us have experienced since then. So I didn't really know what to expect, but I had called my agent and I said, so what should I be looking to do while I'm there? Should I be going to pitch meetings? And she said, what I want you to do is I want you to find a network. I want you to find a network of other writers who are going to be there to support you. If you can find a critique partner, because you don't have one, that's great. That's going to happen organically. Just go to a lot of workshops and see what happens. And so I went to the literacy signing, which is always held before the workshops kick off. And so it's held the Wednesday before the Thursday session. And I went and I said hello to a couple of authors I had spoken to on Twitter, and I kind of walked out of the literary session just thinking to myself, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing here. And I had a moment of just complete freak out where I had to go and kind of be by myself in my room. I also wasn't staying at the hotel the first night. But I think that once I got back on Thursday, I went to a whole bunch of sessions, and then I met you guys, and that became a built-in network because everybody was very kind to me and very easy to talk to. And I think that that was the most surprising thing, was how quickly everything that I had been reading online about authors being very nice and being willing to talk to you, and really for the most part being a very generous group of people, how true that was. So authors who had been published for 25 years were being very kind, and you have a little first-timers badge on your flag on your badge, and they would come up to you and they would ask about how you're enjoying it and if you're overwhelmed and what you wrote. And I think that was a really positive thing, and that's when it first started to kind of turn for me. So maybe, Lachelle, when did you first start to think, okay, maybe I haven't done this crazy thing, and maybe this was a positive decision that I made?
Actually, it was in that first that newbie orientation. I think, isn't that where I met you, Tracy?
Yeah, that's when it worked. That's when it clicked for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the 4 of you met each other there, and then I was a late tag along a while after. I didn't go to that.
Yeah, we were all sitting in like the same little pocket, and I don't remember who started talking first, but
Tracy.
I'm pretty sure it was me. It was probably me.
Tracy not playing the role of the introvert at all.
No, I have a big personality, and I know that I have an acquired taste, so I was like, I'm going to feel these ladies out and see if they like them, and if they do, then I'm golden.
And we've kept her ever since, so there you go. So
it was meant to be.
Yeah, meant to be. So it was the new person orientation for you, Lachelle. How about you, Mary Chris?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say the same thing. That was really wonderful that they offered that. I mean, one, because you got some good information, but I think the more valuable thing about that was that it was a room full of people that were there for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I do remember kind of standing in the back of that room and strategically looking for other people who were sitting by themselves, who probably weren't there with a writer's group or, with their friend. And so I don't remember who I saw. It might have been Tracy, but I looked for somebody kind of by themselves and strategically set with that group, hoping that would be a way to meet people. So yeah, I think that orientation was really wonderful. Also, just honestly, even from the moment I got there, I guess this was probably whatever day that orientation was, Wednesday. And I sat with the conference program and a cup of coffee, just kind of, I guess, in the lobby or the bar area. And it's so true that you have that little orange first-timer thing on your badge, and people really do talk to you and ask, where you're from and what you write. And, at first I'm like, oh, do I want to put this, bright orange sticker that says first-timer on my badge? Do I want that? And I found out really, really quickly that you do want to do that, and that people really genuinely are interested in what you write and why you're there and want to make you feel welcome. It's very cool.
I remember feeling that same way. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was just saying, I remember feeling that same way about that orange sticker. It's like, I don't want people to know this is my first time. But yeah, you really do.
Yeah. You really do.
Handy. Yeah.
You do. They want to talk to you, and they want to be generous and kind of make sure that you feel included. So.
Yeah.
No matter what I did, people would come up to me and say, "You're new. How can we help you? Do you have someone to sit with? Do you have someone to eat with?" So that orange badge is actually gold. You want the orange, the first-timer badge.
Yeah. Go for the badge.
I'm going to wear mine again this year.
No, we're not going to let you do that. You can't get away with it anymore.
Totally. I just like the preferential treatment, that's all.
It's funny how much they tell you to wear your badge at all times, and it makes sense, right, because you're with a big conference.
Yes.
Side note, there was another conference going on I believe it was Tuesday before people started arriving, and it was a group of Microsoft programmers. So I remember watching on Twitter, and the run-up to RWA, when you're going, even if you're nervous about it, and even if you don't know what to expect because it's your first time, it's really all I wanted to do was be there. I was sitting at work and I was kind of checking Twitter and being like, oh my God, Serena Bell is there and she's talking about this, or Ruthie Knox is talking about that, and it was just very exciting to see people chatting. And one of the things they were talking about was people could not get over the fact that there was a Microsoft conference at the same time. So I am sincerely hoping that we one day will get the conference chance meeting between the romance author and the programming software guy. So hopefully, I don't know what the software guys thought about 3,000-ish romance authors converging on a hotel, but there you go. So Tracy, you were kind of the instigator, I think, with talking to people. When did you start to feel comfortable at the conference, and did you ever feel comfortable at the conference?
I don't think that there was this big aha, I feel comfortable moment. I think it was just being there for a while, and obviously sitting down and talking to the other three at the newbie thing, and then we had, I think it was at lunch, we were talking to Lexi, and I got to have lunch with you guys. You guys are going to think this is so corny. I can't believe I'm telling you this. We were in the middle of the keynote lunch that first day, and I don't even remember what the speech was about or what they were talking about, but I remember getting all teary-eyed, and I look over and I'm looking at Lexi, and I have these tears in my eyes, and I'm like, not because it was a sad speech, but just because I'm like, I made friends, and these are people who I can actually talk to and I feel comfortable sitting with and talking to. And Lexi extended this invitation to us to come to the ice cream social, and we were all talking about it. And I think it was kind of that night at the ice cream social when I was finally these are people who I'm going to be spending the rest of the conference with. So I felt very comfortable with knowing that fact and knowing that I had developed some kind of relationship with you guys. And I think that was kind of if there was a moment, that was kind of the moment when I realized this is my group.
I feel like I need to hug you guys right now.
So virtual hug. Very, very soon we will actually be around each other. It's going to be great.
Get my boobs up in there.
All right, so I'm going to tell my side of the infamous. I feel like this is living in myth now, this ice cream social, because I'm pretty sure we've talked about it every single time we've had it, all 5 of us on a first draft, but we're going to tell it anyway. So I got to the ice cream social. The ice cream social is something that's run by the RWA Contemporary group that I think used to be Women's Fiction and Chick Lit, and then it was rebranded once those kind of started to become less of a market share. So I was looking for parties and things I could go to where I could meet people, this crazy thing like making friends. So I had my badge on and I was standing there and I got in line and there were a couple people and kind of everybody was being, very nice and getting checked in. And I think I just literally snuck into your group by saying something about checking in, and I purposely sat down near you guys and kind of just butted into the conversation. And there was ice cream, and it wasn't there yet. And
Yes.
When it did get there, it was too hard to serve. So there was a bunch of stuff to talk about, and there were playing cards and stuff like that on the tables, and then there was a raffle. And by that time, by the end of it all, Mary, Chris, and I decided we were going to get a drink. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not saying that everybody should drink, and I'm not saying that everybody should go to the hotel bar, but you can go to the hotel bar. Because really, honestly, that's where I think we agreed to have lunch or dinner or exchange Twitter handles or something like that, and we started chatting. So that's my side of the story, that you should always give your Twitter handle out to people and your card, and you should have business cards, because that's how we ended up getting in touch. I think we exchanged Twitter stuff, and then we exchanged phone numbers and started texting about meals and stuff like that. So that's my side of the mythic ice cream story.
I was thinking that this year I should take 2 different kinds of cards, like one, my business card, to give people, but then also like this card with this really cute picture of me, like, and like, you just made a new friend, with my phone number on it, my phone number and my Twitter handle, so like people would remember that they just made a new friend. But yeah, because I remember like switching information with you guys, and I couldn't remember any of your names, so for the longest time, Lexi was in my phone as her card name, so it would have said Alexis Anne, dark hair, Florida. That's how I remember her.
Yeah, I've definitely done that before too.
I had Julia as girl from New York because I could not remember her name. So I think it's important to make sure you're swapping those cards and names, because you don't want to put girl from New York in your phone.
It is important, because we went to that first-timer meeting and we exchanged cards, and I didn't realize it. I had stuck it somewhere funny, so I got back to my room that night and I couldn't find your cards. And I was so distraught. But luckily, we went to the lunch the next day, and I happened to walk in behind you guys, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I have a whole junk drawer full of cards, everybody's cards from last year, and I don't want to throw them out, even though the people who I've stayed in touch with and everything, I know, obviously. And I have all your phone numbers and your addresses, and we'll show up one day, I'm sure. But no, I have all those cards still, because you never know, and that's the thing more than anything else. It's about networking, but more than about networking, it's about kind of making connections with people. And some of those connections are going to be very fleeting, and some of them are going to end up being your critique partners and the people who you text in the middle of the day being like, oh my God, this thing happened. And it may not actually relate to writing at all, but it's great having that network. So it's so cliche, but you walk out with friends as well as, a network. So yeah, very exciting. So maybe going off of that a little bit. So there are the tangibles, right? There are the workshops that you can go to. There are the lunch keynote things you can go to. Although I think there are fewer of those this year than there were last year, which is strange. But there are those kinds of things. But maybe we can talk a little bit about the intangibles, not the craft workshops, not the self-publishing track, but the stuff that you take away from RWA and you kind of think, yeah, that was really cool that I got to do that. If anybody feels like jumping in with something they felt like wasn't on the program, but they felt was valuable.
I could start with this one, because I went into RWA not really sure what I wanted to do with my career precisely. And so I started off on more of a traditional track with things, and it didn't really fit the vibe that I was going for. It wasn't sitting right, and things weren't working out for me well. But I didn't know I really didn't understand that there was a self-publishing track that year where I could have followed different courses that were just self-publishing. And it was through this network of people, through Tracy and through a couple of other things, my roommate, and some things that happened, that some conversations took place. And because you're with other writers, you get to talk just about writing and protagonists and plot lines and publishing, and all of a sudden it was a very clear moment for me how I needed to restructure the rest of the conference, and it became very productive for me from there on out.
So you really took that idea of traditional publishing and kind of were like, that's not actually what I want to do based on what I'm hearing, and kind of had it decided on a different direction.
Exactly, but I wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't meeting different people and able to have those one-on-one conversations about what's really my motivation, what's really going on, what do I need, and be able to seek advice from other people who are there.
How about you, Lachelle?
For me, well, the self-publishing track was really important for me, but I think we've really already touched on what I came away with, which was the relationships with you guys. I went into the conference just going for the workshops, going for the seminars, and I came out with a whole support group, which has been so incredibly I mean, I don't even know what I did without you guys.
No, I don't know either.
I don't know what I did before, because you guys have been my sanity over the year.
Yeah, I think that's a feeling that's pretty universally shared among all of us, especially when that email goes out that's like, okay, I might be losing it, so I thought I'd email you guys before I burn my manuscript to the ground.
That's like once to write again. It's like a once a week occurrence for the 5 of us, I think.
Yeah, I think we've each gone through that.
Kind of all have that moment together. Yeah. Mary Chris, what about you? Was there anything that kind of couldn't be described in a program that you got away from RWA that we haven't touched on?
I think we've hit on most of it. I do always just think, you know, anytime you are with writers for that much time, it really helps you feel like you're a writer. I think somebody already talked about this, but you know, you spend all the time talking about plotting and protagonist, and people's eyes don't glaze over. So that's definitely cool. And what I really liked about the conference is no matter where you are with that, whether you have 1 book out or 0 books out, everyone treats you like a writer and they ask what you write, and that's great. I also really appreciated that it was romance focused, you know, focused on writing as a career. I had been to other writing conferences, but it was really cool to go to a genre-specific conference where everyone's sort of talking about the same type of book. So, you know, while yes, there are so many variations of romance, and there's young adult and suspense and, you know, all kinds of different things, but we're all sort of centrally talking about the same general type of story and book, and so that was really nice. I really liked that in comparison to a more broad writing conference where it's kind of all over the board. So both have merit, but I really enjoyed that. I found it really relaxing.
How about you, Tracy?
Obviously, the things that we talked about. You know, I came away with my friendships with you guys, and great relationships. But there were a couple of things that I learned from my experience, or that I brought away from my experience. I just lost my headphone. Yeah. From last year. That I think are going to be very important moving into this coming RWA. And the first one was I missed out on a lot of experiences last year because I turned into bed at like 7 every night.
Yeah, you're not doing that this year. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I would expect you to smack me if I decided to go to my room before 9 at least. But I missed out on a lot of things because I was so focused on going to the workshops and getting a good night's sleep, you know, being in bed by 8 o'clock and being awake by 5 o'clock and making sure that, you know. But so this year, you know, so that taught me that this year I missed out on a lot of things, and I don't want to miss out on anything this year. So this year I have vowed to get no sleep at all and just get through the conference on apparently pure adrenaline. And the second thing was
coffee. I don't know.
something. I don't drink coffee, but there'll be caffeine involved, I'm sure.
Sure.
But and then the second thing was really last year. There was kind of this moment that I shared. I could not even tell you the woman's name, and that makes me sad. But I shared this moment. This is gonna sound so awkward with this lady in the bathroom. We were both standing at the mirror, and she was an older lady, and she sees my little orange badge, and she's like, "Oh, this is your first time." And we talked for a couple minutes there in front of the mirror, and she's touching up her lipstick. And as she's getting ready to leave, she turns back from the door, and she takes this little pin off of her shirt, and she gives it to me. And she told me that she has wore it to RWA every year, and that she wanted me to have it.
Aww.
And it, of course, was one of those things that just kind of brought tears to my eyes. And she's telling me, the relationships that you make here, these are going to be your friends for the rest of your life. And that's kind of something that I want to carry with me as I move into this coming year and the years after that, is making sure I make someone feel the same way that woman made me feel. If I can make someone that happy, I'm going to do it. And that was something that I learned this year that was invaluable.
Yeah, I think that hopefully this will help some people either make the decision to go next year or ease some of their concerns about going, if they're going for the first time this year. So I've kind of got two things. One thing about RWA that I was not expecting was it opened me up. I've always wanted to go the traditional route, and it opened me up to the idea of doing some self-publishing, and knowing that if a book doesn't quite fit traditional publishing, it doesn't mean the end of that book. It doesn't mean it has to kind of fester on my hard drive somewhere and never see the light of day except with a critique partner. And that's been really exciting, and that kind of led to some projects. And so I'm really grateful that it opened my eyes to that. But the other thing was I had no idea how open and generous the romance community was. And I know that every community, especially a large one, with a lot of people who are all working very hard, you're going to run into some people who maybe aren't the nicest, to put it nicely. But I think that the thing that I got out of it was how generous everybody was. And I think the story about the pin in the bathroom, Tracy, really epitomizes that in a much better example than I would have, except that I met a bunch of people for the first time, some people I knew on Twitter through my agency, and I kind of felt like for the first time I was a member of this community, and I was a writer, and I could stop apologizing for not being published,
Right.
and I could say to people, no, I write historical and I write contemporary, and this is what I do, and no, I don't have a book deal, no, I don't have a contract, but I'm still a writer. And I think that knowing that you can kind of take yourself out of the aspiring writer thing, it's actually one of my least favorite terms as aspiring author, because I feel like if you take yourself seriously and you do this and you're attempting to make it a career, you haven't gotten there yet, but you are taking it seriously.
Right.
And I think that was one of the most valuable things to learn, and to know that it's okay, because this community is relatively open, to randomly message somebody on Twitter. And that's how I started talking to the people who Lexi and I are writing an anthology with, and that's how we started talking, because we just randomly were tweeting back and forth. There must have been some reason that we followed each other, but I know I can tell you Alexandra, who has promised me that she's going to watch this on YouTube, so I'm going to throw out a shout out right now. Alexandra and I started talking because we both responded to a tweet by Jane from Dear Author, and we are now in an anthology together, coming out hopefully in November. So it was one of those things where you never know where those connections are going to lead you, and it is totally legitimate to be somebody who is not published and a part of the community just as much as it is being a New York Times bestselling author and being a part of the community. And that the community is generous and willing to welcome you in, but you have to take that first step. So talking about first steps, see my fantastic transitions here. Talking about first steps, maybe we can talk a little bit about what some of the stumbling blocks that kept you from RWA earlier in your career were. I know I had thought about it. I don't know if anybody else had been on their radar, but what are the stumbling blocks you could see for some people, and why do you think it's worth it, or maybe it's not worth it for them at that point? I know money is a big one, and that was the big one for me. Money and knowing about it, because I found out about it really late. But maybe, Mary Chris, if you want to talk a little bit about some of the concerns you maybe had when you were first signing up.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I had also known about RWA for a long time. I think I mentioned some authors that I had read, would all kind of the same thing you're talking about. I think this might have been kind of pre-Twitter, but, you would see Facebook posts and blog posts wrapping up RWA. And I don't know. I think for me, for those years, I wasn't really taking myself seriously as a writer. It was a hobby. And so at that point, the thought of investing the money to go, just didn't seem worth it. So yeah, I think, that was years ago, part of my concern with not going to RWA. Yeah, this year it felt like the right thing to do, or last year it felt like the right thing to do, kind of for networking reasons. So I didn't hesitate too much. Again, maybe there's the idea, like, I guess it kind of does come back to, you get into the hotel and the plane ticket, and I don't know anybody, and what is this experience going to be like? And so it is, you kind of weigh those things out. And vacation days, is it all going to pay off? But I don't feel like I had those thoughts too much. I think I was at a point where I was taking my writing pretty seriously, and it really felt like the right thing to do.
Alexis, what about you?
Well, I know previous to last year, I didn't feel like RWA was necessarily the right place for me. I didn't identify myself as a romance author yet, and I didn't know that I necessarily was ever going to write anything about romance. So I didn't know if it was the right place for me, but I also wasn't identifying myself as a writer yet. And I had in my head that going to a national conference like the RWA conference is something where you need to be established, you need to have something published, you need to be on your way, and you need to know what that is. And the reality is that you don't necessarily have to be solidly within the romance genre. You may just be interested in it. Mm-hmm. And you can be at any stage in your writing career, and it's a great place to go and learn, and there's something for everyone at every stage of the journey there, whether it's just starting out and just figuring it out and just learning how to write, or you're somebody who has a couple of books out and you know what you're doing. So now I know that RWA is a great place to go. Money was also a big thing. Do you want to spend that much money? Obviously, it seems like a huge amount of money, but what it's given me in return is priceless. So,
how about you, Tracy?
Well, like I said earlier, I didn't even know what it was. I was not familiar with Romance Writers of America prior to getting that email from Smashwords in June of last year. So that's why I didn't go years before. But it felt like it kind of hit at just like this perfect moment, because I'd been writing for a while, a year and a half. I mean, it's not really too long. I mean, seriously writing. I mean, taking it seriously and publishing. And it kind of hit at this perfect time, because it was when my books were starting to take off and starting to sell, and I was finally getting a readership, and things were kind of paying off. And I thought, here's what I have. I have, a pretty solid reader base. I have several books published. I have some things going for me, but the one thing that I didn't have was anyone in my life who understood what I was doing. I don't care if you know a writer or if you live with a writer, you don't understand what it's like to be a writer. And I didn't have someone who understood how emotionally and physically and mentally exhausting it could be some days. And so, yes, money is always an issue when it comes to thinking about, do I want to spend that much going to something like this? But it was, I mean, to me, it was totally worth spending that money, because walking away with you guys, I mean, having you guys as friends and as peers, I just, it's nothing in this world that I would never, I would not trade it for anything.
How about you, Lachelle?
Well, for me, like Tracy, I had been writing seriously for about a year. But until I hit that publish button for that first book, I really didn't know that RWA existed. It wasn't even on my radar. And so that was the only roadblock for me. It was really just knowledge. I didn't know it was out there. But once I found it, it was like, I definitely need to check into this, because I don't know, I guess I just instinctively knew that it was something that I needed. The money would pay for itself, basically. Yeah. So.
So there are not many things that intimidate me. I'm used to kind of bossing people around and things like that. But RWA intimidated me, and hugely intimidated me. And I think that at some point I was listening to Sarah Wendell's Smart Bitches Trashy Books. She does a podcast, the Dear Bitches Smart Authors podcast. And she was doing all these podcast interviews from RWA. And I kind of got, it was 2 years ago, and I kind of sat there and I was like, it's in Anaheim, which is very close to where I live. I could have done this for low cost. Why am I not there? And I got to a point where I was just like, you know what? I just have to start saying yes to some things and really making writing a priority and making my career a priority. And I think that that was the big stumbling block, was just deciding that I was going to be a professional writer. And being a professional writer meant knowing other writers and meant taking workshops, even if, you know, the one thing I got out of the workshop was something I didn't want to do with my writing. And so I think the biggest stumbling block, other than things that we talked about, money, time, all those things, I think that was really it more than anything else, was it was me not being ready to take my career seriously until I heard those podcasts, and I was just like, I want to be there. I really, it sounds like fun. And that was the thing. It sounded like fun, and it sounded like a really good time, and it sounded like I could meet people who are going to be beneficial to my career, but also become very good friends. So luckily that was my experience. So next time we do this in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about kind of the practical side of things, what to pack, what to expect, and in terms of what you should bring, what you shouldn't bring, what's worth it, shipping books back home. The sheer volume of books that you get. I was limiting the number of books that I got, and I think I ended up coming home with something like 55 physical hard copies of books. So we're going to talk about that next time around. But I do want to do a really quick, like, what's the one piece of practical advice you would give to people when they go to RWA? I don't know. I know I'm springing this on you, so if there's somebody who wants to go first, you can go.
Oh my God, I totally will go first, because
go for it.
It seems like the most obvious thing in the world. But no one told me going into last conference to take paper and a pen. So I thought you're a writer. No. Yeah, I do all of my writing on my computer. I hardly ever scratch anything. And like I said, this is the most obvious and stupid thing in the world. But I thought I could just take my iPad and hit record and just sit there and enjoy the workshops, you know? And I get there, and I realize, oh my God, I don't even have a pen. I spent my entire first day of workshops just sitting there like, oops. So made a quick trip to the store, and you know, but I mean that is God's honest truth. Make sure you take paper and pens. Oh my God.
Your laptop also helpful. You can totally bring that. Nobody's going to judge you. Most people have them out anyway.
I'm the exact opposite. I actually just like to sit there and absorb. So I brought a lot of pen and paper and an iPad and a laptop, and I didn't use any of it.
Oh my. Yeah, see, I would have taken a million notes had I had something to take notes with, because it never occurred to me to take those things.
I took a million notes on my iPad with like a little portable keyboard. I wish, like day one, I was wishing I had my laptop with me, because I was just like, I can type so much faster on my laptop, and I'm taking 1,000,001 notes. So, yeah, it would have been helpful. Alexis, do you have a piece of advice that you give people other than absorb?
I definitely absorb everything, but and this is part of it. Don't be afraid to just walk up to somebody and say hi. I ate lunch with complete strangers on the first day. Every time I walked into the bar, it was to meet someone new. Everyone is there to network and to meet new people. So don't be afraid to be alone. Don't be afraid to walk up to a new group of people. Have your business cards ready if they ask for it, and just be friendly.
Business cards. Please bring business cards, and print them now. Don't print them. You know, don't think of them 2 days before you get to RWA. Print them now, because you're going to need to pick them up. There you go. She's got new ones. New ones.
Wait, I got new ones.
Do it again.
I got my picture on them this year.
Okay, we should preface this. I'm really sad about that, actually, because you had a very sexy man on your business cards last year. So,
I did.
Still on your business cards?
Like this one?
Yeah, like that one.
Oh, don't worry. Some of them this year have Adam.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you guys haven't read it yet, you should read it, because that picture goes with a story. That's all I'm saying.
A story. I had different ones.
Wait, you mean bed now?
I have lots.
Good Lord, woman.
Talk about being weird. Oh my god.
All right.
Yeah.
I need to step up my business cards, clearly. Lachelle, do you have some print really hot business cards?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What's your kind of one takeaway teaser thing that you would give people advice about?
Are we getting feedback?
We are.
I don't know how to stop
my
it.
one piece of advice.
Die over here.
Are you dying over here?
No.
Everything is echoing.
Plus, it's storming.
It is storming
no.
here. It is storming here.
Maybe we should wrap up.
We should. All right, we're gonna skip the rest of this. Y'all can promo another time. Everybody has books except me. Everybody has websites. Everybody has Twitter. You can go find us, and we're gonna get out of it. So we will be talking 2 days from now. All the info will be up, and we'll be getting it out. So bye, everybody. Sorry about the end of this.
Bye.